Welcome back, my fellow Zambians, to the second of our weekly conversations. A word for anyone joining us tonight for the first time. This work carries the title, In Dialogue with My President. In honest terms, it is a monologue. It is the voice of one citizen in the hope that what is said here reaches not only the ear of His Excellency, but the ear of every Zambian and the ear of every person who holds or hopes one day to hold a position of trust in our country. We are working together, joining hands, joining heads, joining hearts, toward the country we know we are meant to become. Zambia is destined for great things if we labor with heart and soul. Last week, we spoke of the morning. Tonight, we move to the table. Good evening, Your Excellency, President Hakainde Hichilema. Good evening, my fellow Zambians. And before I go further, Mr. President, let me say plainly who else I am speaking to tonight. I am speaking to you. But through you, I am speaking to every leader who can hear me. To the men and women who will stand for the presidency, parliament, or in our councils. I also speak to those who lead far from the ballot box, the boardroom, the church, mosque, and in the home. I begin with the president because the whole nation is asking who should lead it. But the question underneath belongs to every one of us who has ever been handed authority for another human being. Why did we seek the position? And now that we hold it, what are we doing with it? Mr. President, I have watched these recent weeks your tireless travels across the provinces. So, tonight's words are not meant to weigh you down. They are meant for the leader who promised at his inauguration that we, the people, will be his masters. Why does this matter now? As you know, Mr. President, when a country wakes up, the first thought is not about politics. It is about breakfast. The second, before the day's work begins, is supper. And between the two, every Zambian household runs a quiet calculation. A bag of meal, a liter of cooking oil, a band of charcoal, a box of matches. The mathematics of the kitchen. And here, Mr. President, I must begin with credit. On the macro picture, the team around you has delivered. Inflation has fallen month after month to 6.6% in May, back inside the Bank of Zambia's own target band, and the lowest reading the country has seen since February 2018. The kwacha, which not so long ago traded above 27 to the dollar, has strengthened by roughly a third and now sits at 18. And the national average price of a bag of meal, which stood above 340 kwacha a year ago, has eased to around 289 kwacha. These numbers were not handed to the country. They were earned. Kudos to your Minister of Finance and his team. Kudos to the Bank of Zambia. And kudos to you for holding the line when easier roads were on offer. And now the harder truth, Mr. President, offered in the very same breath, because a leader is owed the whole picture, not half of the picture. A falling number on a chart is not yet a full plate on a table. The household is not a small economy. The household is the economy, or economia, the whole household. And the household is still straining. The Jesuit Center's basket of basic needs for a family of 5 in Lusaka stood at over 12,000 kwacha in March. Set that beside what a teacher earns, what a nurse earns, what a marketeer counts in the evening, and you see a gap that no quarterly statistic can close. 6 in 10 Zambians were living in poverty in 2024. The country does not feel that as a percentage. It feels it as a thinner pot. Indeed, mealie meal at 289 kwacha is better than 344 kwacha, and that is no small thing. But the woman who heard you in 2021, Mr. President, say that it might come to 50 kwacha has not forgotten the figure. And she is not consoled by a bag that is merely lighter than last year's. She is consoled only when the change left in her hand is heavier than it was this morning. The macro is real, Mr. President. The micro is more real for her. Let us check the country's pulse. Mr. President, 3 women tonight. They will not speak. You and I will listen. The first is Mai Tamara in Garden Compound. She rises at 4 in the morning. She lights a brazier. She makes nshima for 2 children who are now in school because of your free education policy, for which she gives honest thanks. Then she walks to Soweto Market with 300 kwacha of capital and returns in the evening with 320 kwacha. She made a profit of 20 kwacha for 14 hours of work. She does not call it poverty. She calls it the kitchen. The second is Mai Jolwe in Muflira. Her husband gave Mopani 27 years of his life before the retrenchment came. The mine breathes again now, and she has heard that copper has reached a record high. What she has not yet heard is what that record does for the rent on her 2 rooms in Muflira East. The third is Sister Nyirenda, a nun running a small clinic outside Petauke. She knows the kwacha is stronger than it was last year. She also knows the medicines on her shelves are still priced as though the kwacha were weak. She is praying quietly that someone in State House understands the lag between the chart and the shelf. Each of these women, Mr. President, is doing exactly what your Minister of Finance does, balancing the budget. The difference is that hers must balance every single day or her family does not eat. The kitchen, Mr. President, is the country's truest finance ministry, and its books are audited nightly by hunger. You have not been absent from the kitchen, Mr. President, and it's only fair to say so. You expanded the social cash transfer to around 1.5 million households. You carried fertilizer support to more than 1 million farmers through the new electronic voucher. The country is bringing in one of the largest maize harvests in its history, close to 5 million tons, after the cruelty of the 2024 drought. And the lights have largely returned. The load shedding that darkened our evenings has eased. These are real. The country sees them. But here, Mr. President, I must be a faithful citizen and not merely a grateful one. Because a leader who is only praised is a leader being slowly misled. The harvest is a record, And yet farmers in our own constituencies are struggling to find a buyer who will pay them fairly for it. The Constituency Development Fund, which you so boldly raised, now stands at 40 million kwacha for each constituency. And yet, the Auditor General reports that of the funds available last year, more than 770 million kwacha sat unspent. And grants meant for the poor were in some places misapplied. A good fund badly stewarded becomes a wound where a bridge was meant to stand. And as the country approaches August, the very discipline that earned those macro gains is being tested. I name these things not to diminish your work, Mr. President. I name them because the work is not done. And the president who is told the work is done is being robbed of the chance to connect with the real experience of his people. Mr. President, allow me, as in our first conversation, one word from the book you carry as a church elder. There is a king in the second book of Samuel, David. At the very height of his power, David asks a strange question. Is there anyone left of the house of Saul to whom I may show kindness? Saul was David's old rival, as you may remember, Mr. President. The people around the king found a man named Mephibosheth, a grandson of Saul, who was lame in both feet, living, poor and forgotten, in a place of no pasture, a place of nothing. King David sends for him. And to this man, crippled, dispossessed, a man with nothing left to offer a king, David says, I will restore to you all that was your family's, and you shall eat at my table always. And the scripture closes the matter with one quiet, astonishing line. So Mephibosheth ate at the king's table like one of the king's sons. Not like a beggar admitted out of pity, like family. That, Your Excellency, is the whole of it. The measure of a leader is not the size of the table. It is who is seated at it. The great leader is the one who looks across the whole country to the lame, the forgotten, the ones still living in their own place of no pasture, and sets a place for them and calls them not beneficiaries, but family. And this, Mr. President, is not only ancient scripture. I have seen it in our own time. Years ago, when the company I worked for moved me from Lusaka to Cape Town, I worked with a colleague named Peter, whose story is captured in my book, Leading Like Madiba. At Mr. Mandela's request, our company was building a school in a high-density area of the Eastern Cape. Peter, who led the work, was invited to brief Madiba on its progress over breakfast at Mr. Mandela's home. On the morning, a company driver named Dumi drove him there. To Peter's amazement, Madiba was waiting for them in the car park. He greeted both men warmly and waved them toward the house. But in the old way of corporate protocol, Dumi retreated quietly to the car, and Peter alone was led to the breakfast table. Just before they began eating, Madiba paused. Peter, he said, I thought there were two of you. Peter replied, No, sir, I came alone. What about the other gentleman? The former president insisted. Oh, that one, sir, is just a driver, Peter answered. He will wait in the car. At that, Mr. Mandela rose. He walked out to the car park, introduced himself to Dumi, and invited him in. Then he stepped into his own kitchen and said, Domi is joining us for breakfast. Can we have another plate, please? Peter could not look at his host in the face. And he never forgot what Madiba had shown him in that one small act about what leadership truly looks like and truly feels like. It was humility at its best. Here was a man holding enormous power, who carried the sacredness of his office with both hands, and who, at the very same time, never forgot that he was simply a human being among other human beings. Ordinary, one of us. And it is precisely there, Mr. President, where a leader honors the sacredness of the office and remembers his own ordinary humanity, that leadership becomes a force for good. From that place, a leader can truly see the people he serves. He can see their pain. He can see their dreams and strengths. He can see their limitations. And he can treat them with the dignity they deserve, not because they have earned it from him, not because they did something for him at all, but simply because they are human. Madiba brought a driver to his table. David seated a forgotten man to his king's table. It is the same thread. The kitchen table of this nation must have a place laid for everyone. So, here is the invitation, Mr. President, and I extend it in the same breath to every leader who is listening to it. Walk into Soweto Market on an ordinary Tuesday, buy a bag of meal for yourself with the kwacha you have counted from your own pocket. Carry it. Ask the woman who sold it to you what she paid 5 years ago and what she pays today. Then carry her answer back to State House and let it sit at the head of your next meeting. Sit this month with a former miner who lost his job and has it back today, and ask him whether the rent has risen faster than the wage. Then speak to the country, not in the language of the cabinet, but in the language of the kitchen. In numbers a grandmother can carry, the price of nshima, the price of a child's lunchbox. And to every leader who hears me, the one reaching for the presidency, the one reaching for parliament, the one who already runs a company, a church, a council, ask yourself Madiba's question before you ask us for our vote, for our labor, for our faith. Who have I left out by the car? Who is standing at my door, whom I have not yet thought to sit at my table? Mr. President, in the manner of our elders, I leave you 4 questions to carry into your rest. When did you last buy a bag of meal yourself with money you had counted from your own pocket? When the chart says inflation is falling, on what day exactly does it fall on the table of the woman in Mtendere who still feeds her family on a single meal a day? What can you do this month, Mr. President, not next year, that she would feel by next Friday? And who is the Mephibosheth of this nation? The one still waiting in the place of no pasture, for whom you have not yet set a place at the table. Your Excellency, until next week, when we will speak of other matters, hold the following with me. May we choose unity. May we choose peace. May we choose kindness. May we choose patience. May we remember that feeding this country is not the work of the president alone, nor of government alone, but the work of one nation beating as one heart. And may we build a table long enough and wide enough that no Zambian is left standing out by the car. May God hold this country with both hands. I wish you a restful night, Mr. President. Good night, Your Excellency. Good night, Zambia.